Hello and welcome. This is going to be a wonderful evening. I am so excited that we have got these superstars here tonight to answer questions, and make sure you do fill out your cards if you have questions. We have some already, but if they come up while we are talking, it's just awesome. We're getting so close to the Tonys, Sunday, just a few days away. And these shows that have been probably in progress for a very long time are now going to get a chance to shine on TV for everyone to see on Sunday. That's amazing, isn't it? So let's get started. Please introduce yourself. Who would like to start? Would you like to start, Rachel?
I'm right here, so.
Yeah, please introduce yourselves. And also, I'd love to hear, what is your favorite part of the casting process?
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Well, my name is Rachel Hoffman. I am a casting director at Telsey and Company. Beetlejuice is the musical that I have running on Broadway this season. Gosh, my favorite part of the casting process. I love when... I love seeing actors succeed in the room. I think I speak probably for everyone here. When somebody comes in and elevates material or makes you hear material in a way that you maybe didn't hear it on the page or you hadn't heard it before. That's always just an exciting part of the casting process to me, when it's, you hear something and an actor does something that makes you sit up or makes you pay attention. So,
that's great. David?
I am David Caparelliotis of Caparelliotis Casting. I apologize. I feel like I'm dressed for summer camp and not for a panel that is televised in any way, shape, or form. This year, the shows that I worked on that are Tony nominated are Inc. at Manhattan Theater Club, the Waverly Gallery, Boys in the Band, and something else. King Lear. King Lear.
Yeah, and Hillary and Clinton.
And Hillary and Clinton. Right. That I was very fortunate enough to be asked to work on. I think my favorite part has strangely become, in the past year, we've been working on a TV show called New Amsterdam for NBC. And I haven't done a lot of TV or film in my career, but I have to say, and this is going to sound totally dorky, but I will own it. There's been something amazing about being able to hire actors for jobs that actually pay them actual money. Actors that I've known for 20, 25 years who have done so many favors for me or worked in not-for-profit theater for very little money. And also, New Amsterdam, it's very important to the producers of the show that we're casting authentically and inclusionarily, if that's a word, diversely. So that's been hugely important to me, and it makes it really interesting and satisfying.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, David.
I'm Merri Sugarman, and the show that we have this season that is Tony nominated is Ain't Too Proud. Thanks. My favorite part of the casting process, I have two favorite things. One is getting to tell somebody that they got a job. Like, not through the agent, but like actually getting to tell the actor that they got a job.
And then the agent gets mad because you did it before the agent could tell.
No, I won't. I won't do it with somebody who doesn't have an agent, unless I happen to bump into them, and I can't keep my mouth shut. And I also like the process when you start something from the ground up, and you have actors who are sort of coming in over and over and over again, and you get to see their process and their progress, and you kind of start to see the penny drop, right, from them taking adjustments and getting better and better, and that's an amazing thing to see.
You guys took all my answers. I'm Benton Whitley. I'm from Stuart Whitley, and we have Hadestown on Broadway this season. And my favorite part of it is getting to watch what originally people might think is an out-of-box idea become the in-the-box idea. And working on shows like Hadestown or like Great Comet 2 seasons ago with Rachel kind of gives me that opportunity on a regular basis, is that we don't bring in just or she's not attracted to, and the material is not attracted to the most kind of standard middle of the line expected talent and storytellers. And so that has given me the opportunity to meet so many new players that aren't kind of the usual suspects, and watching them actually can come into a commercial mainstream show on Broadway, something that they probably thought that they were never really right for or built for or even frankly trained for, but then realize is for them, is a really rewarding process.
Oh, that's just wonderful. This is like the big star-studded time, and everything's so beautifully presented for the Tonys, and everyone can go and see these shows now as they are in all their glory. But obviously, there's a long road that happens with, especially with original shows. Would you like to talk a little bit about the process with the casting over the amount of time that it's taken to get the show from when you got it to where it is now on Broadway?
This usually applies more to musicals than to plays, I would guess, in terms of length. And my guess is, I wonder if it's either Hadestown or Ain't Too Proud that has had the longest role. Probably Hadestown if you start from her concept album.
Yeah, so that was 10 years ago,
Yeah.
right? But Rachel came into it just over 6 years ago, which
Okay.
is when I came in.
Yeah. And so you started 6 years ago.
Yeah,
You
6
started
years
like
ago, the first table read of the show. Literally it was like 3 or 4 days notice. She called me and said, Benton, I just met with this amazing composer in this demo album. I told her that I would hear it read out loud for me next week. It's based on the Orpheus and Eurydice myth. Can we find some people? I don't know. I don't really know. Here are the voice types. And 3 days later, that was maybe on a Tuesday, and on that Friday, we literally just winged it and read it out loud. And 2 of those people were Amber Gray and Patrick Page.
Wow. That's so cool. For Beetlejuice, it was, sort of standard, but more quick. It all happened more quickly than I think than Hadestown did. But I don't know how much development had happened. Obviously, they had, there were songs and there was a script before the first reading, but it started with a 29-hour reading, and then I think there were 2 or 3 labs, then an out-of-town production in D.C. last fall, and then arriving on Broadway. And because it's a commercial, it's a more commercial title, it's a title that people know, maybe that's part of the reason that it happened. That was still long, don't get me wrong, that was over 3 years, but even so, 3 years seems quick in my estimation, compared to some of, the road for a lot of these shows, but.
And I think, oh no, you go.
Well, we'll just stay on musicals for a sec. Ain't Too Proud was almost 4 years. It was very much the same as Beetlejuice. We had a 29-hour reading, 2 labs, a dance workshop, and then the out-of-town production at Berkeley. What I love about it is that, but for one person, and that was really a circumstance that couldn't be helped, the entire company is exactly the same. From the reading to the Broadway show, and that so rarely happens. So I love that about this. And we had the same thing, but with musicals, you have dance calls, and then I know you have work sessions with plays that are non-musical, but a lot of it has to do with, we went through, I would say, a 6-month period where maybe we were going to have a star be in it, and maybe we were going to get a theater, and then we didn't get a theater, and then we lost an actor, and then we waited for that actor. And ultimately, with this particular show, the stars just kind of aligned. But the process is definitely I think pretty much the same with a Broadway musical. It's a lot of steps.
I would say, too, just to point out something that you probably wouldn't point out about yourself and what you just said, it's a testament to the talents of a casting director if what Merri just said is the truth, which we have to believe that it is because Merri said it, that she cast a reading of it and it's the same cast. Yeah. Because a lot of times casting directors are the first people to get a script and talk to the director and playwright about it, and the director and playwright may say, and producer, let's put a reading together, and that's where a lot of times we may know more actors than the creative team, we may make recommendations, and you put people around the table. So to have that entire group
That's nice
make
of
their
you.
way to Broadway is an
That's actually
astonishing
not why I
feat.
said it, but
no,
that's
no,
very nice of you.
no, but it's.
But what's interesting about that, I'll take a little credit for that, but also, the people that I cast in the show kind of created the roles. And so what we got lucky about was that all of those people sort of stepped up and were kind of on the same page conceptually and type-wise and all of that. As they started to create things, then the creative teams had more and more confidence in them. And as things started to change, those actors kind of sometimes had to rise to the occasion and not necessarily be doing what they were originally hired for. But yeah.
And I think it points to one of the things that casting directors can do, which is to afford access to opportunity to actors. We're not often the ones that make the decisions, but we can, in some cases, provide access, which clearly you did, and those actors rose to the occasion. Just for plays, going back to your question, I work in the commercial field and also in the not-for-profit field. And in the commercial field, obviously, star casting, we all know what that is. Glenda Jackson and King Lear, Laurie Metcalf and Hillary Clinton. Those are people that get plays greenlit. Scott Rudin is a prolific and terrific producer, and you sit in a meeting with him and someone will say, maybe Sam Jackson would be good for that. And then you see him typing and you realize that he's actually emailing Sam Jackson as you're sitting there saying, hey, you want to read a script? Which could take a casting director a month to get that script to that actor, but Scott just does it. So that's one way that things happen, and then it happens very quickly. King Lear was satisfying because Glenda was the only person that was attached. So then it was just casting everybody else, which was fantastic. The not-for-profits, things are scheduled, so you have to cast them. They have to be done by the time they go into rehearsal.
And there's a very small budget for the not-for-profits, so we're charged with casting without a lot of money, so that usually
actors
means
that
not
are
a
gonna
lot
be
of
working
time.
for favored nations for the same amount of money. And then there are projects that I'm sure we have all had that have never seen the light of day. That someone will call and say, this play will only happen if we can, quote unquote, attach a star. That's the least interesting part of the job for me. If I said to everybody right now, please do a list of women 60 to 70, you would all throw most likely the same 5 to 10 names on that list. And of that list, maybe 7 of them have no interest in doing theater. Right, so you could spend 2 years trying to, quote unquote, attach a star to a project that will only go if the star signs on, and that's when plays can take a long time, as opposed to the musicals where the process itself is longer, I think.
Yeah. Benton, do you want to talk about the process with Hades? So you had the
yeah.
Canadian production. for
Totally.
one.
So it started first with a concept album that Aeneas did completely on her own with no creative team attached. It was just her brainchild, right? And from that, she found Rachel Chafkin, and then Rachel had the two of them together created the actual kind of theatrical way they were going to take those, I think it was maybe a dozen songs originally, and really tell a more kind of linear story with it. And that started 6 years ago with those table reads that we did down at New York Theater Workshop. But then from there, it went from being just in a room smaller than this room. If you guys have ever seen a play at New York Theater Workshop, it's a tiny, tiny room, and the actual device was that everyone was in the room together. The audience was in the room with the actors, and you knew that, and they knew that, and the story was staged that way. It had no ensemble. It had no choreography. It was just a cast of 5 principals and 3 fates for a total of 8 people. And so it was after that step that we then realized, okay, now let's make it a bit larger, and let's add an ensemble of 5 more, 5 what we call the workers in the show. And so the producers had the great idea of kind of taking it out of sight and going somewhere where probably no one would see it, which was Edmonton, Canada, at a theater called the Citadel Theater, which is an amazing not-for-profit theater in Edmonton, which I had never been to Edmonton before, and I don't know if anyone here has, but the show, it's very far away. It took 3 airplanes to get there from LaGuardia. How often does that take? And the show was in December, and it was a high of 5 degrees outside. But it was at the Canadian production that for the first time we incorporated choreography and brought on David Newman, the choreographer, and realized how we could tell the story dance-wise. And then from Canada, we then went to the National Theatre in London this past fall and was part of their actual not-for-profit season. And that's where we lined up the 5 principals that you guys now see on Broadway today. We hired them here in New York and shipped them over to do the show there. And that's when the designers all came on and actually really built the show with the lighting design, the set design, the costume design. The set's super technical for those of you that haven't seen it. I don't know how we're going to tour it. We'll have to figure that out. But it was at the National where we actually kind of had the first ingestion of what it looks like on Broadway. But then in between, we did another reading, another dance lab, and changed a lot. And really, I think it actually was in that step when we really confirmed that these were the 5 people that were going to tell the story for us. We really looked at who those 5 actors were and what they actually are as people and as storytellers naturally, and really confirmed that we are going to actually take their points of view as humans and actually use that in telling the story. So, for example, Reeve Carney, who plays Orpheus, he was doing kind of a version of Orpheus that was the combination of like 2 or 3 different guys that had played it prior to him. And it was finally when we got to the National and we realized, oh, it should just be Reeve, and we should quit actually trying to make him be kind of other versions of this character. And so the character changed drastically from the London production to the Broadway production. And what you see now, what he does on stage every night, is pretty much him just being himself, which I think really works pretty great.
Do you have a feeling that at one point you said to yourself, this is going to work, this is going to be a hit? You know, because I would imagine from the very beginning, was it from the very beginning when you said this is going to work, or was there something that happened along the way in your process of what you saw with the shows and the people that you were putting into them? You're like, yeah, this clicks, this is going to work.
With Ain't Too Proud, and I think with a lot of other shows, you sort of see you see an inception of it, whether it's a reading or a little tour or a not-for-profit production, and then you say, oh, that's great, but only like the book needs work, or that's great, but this is so long, or that's great, but, and everybody's sort of got a different idea of what needs to change and whether it will change, and certain creatives stay and some come and some go, and there usually is one moment though where it kind of gels and you're like, oh, this is really good, and I usually think it's because of the actors. You know, if you have, it doesn't matter how great the material is unless you have the right storytellers.
Well, and with Ain't Too Proud, the choreography is so different than, you know, what was traditional with it, and that it feels like it's sort of zoomed into 2019. I mean, it's exhilarating, really, yeah. I think, and so do so many. So, you know, even was that different in the very beginning? Was it, oh, we're going to really modernize the idea of these, the way that these people move?
Yes. I mean, it's interesting because Sergio Trujillo, who's also the choreographer of Jersey Boys, right? So like in Jersey Boys, what he had to do was create something that looked like what the Four Seasons might be doing, because if you watch like old videos of the Four Seasons, they don't move at all. But you can't have a Broadway musical where nobody's moving. With the Temps, like you know, the Temptations moved and were kind of known for their smooth moves, and he had an idea that whatever it was, it needed to be how the Temptations would be moving in the 21st century. And then what happens is he choreographed towards Ephraim Sykes and towards Jeremy Pope and the people who he knew were going to be in it. And so I don't think he really expected it to ultimately be that. but because those guys could all like do really extraordinary things dance-wise, I don't know how we're gonna find anybody else to be in it, but like,
Good
but
luck.
yeah. But that's really what happened. Then he started tailoring it. Then I think all choreographers do that. They say like, I see why this person is the person to play the part. I'll make it work choreographically, or yeah.
I think that is why also these long incubations that shows have, I mean, sometimes they can be so monotonous and long and draining, but I think the really big payoff with them is that when you do get these original actors attached to them from the beginning, the creative team actually has the time to really actually make their strengths shine. And that's something that happened in Hadestown as well, right? You know, I mean, Amber has been playing Persephone now for us for 6 years. And every time, you know, she brings more and more of herself to it, and especially in the choreography. You know, she didn't really move that much when it was off Broadway at New York Theater Workshop, because there was not a choreographer. So everything was kind of her own movement, right? And so then when we hired the choreographer and brought in David, who actually has been attached to the show in its very earliest stage, 11 years ago when Aeneas was attached, he actually is from. They have an original connection from that world in Connecticut. So he always was super familiar with the show, but actually wasn't officially attached until then. And she, you know, Amber's a mover, and every
Not a dancer.
but a very good mover. I mean, a fabulous mover, in fact. But it was. I think that when you have these long processes like that, just like Sergio was able to find, you know, what Jeremy and Ephraim did so well, we have the time to actually sit back and actually just keep shaping it so that, you know, we have this final product that is what you see.
And as far as having casting challenges, I'd love to find out about the things that you feel like were challenges for you with the productions. Something that, well, for instance, I'm thinking about the main character in Beetlejuice. Like, there's this idea that people have, and when you are talking to the director and trying to figure out where you're going to go with this, you know, do I have to get a Michael Keaton? What do I, you know, how did that start for you, and what was the process with that?
You know, I think they weren't looking for, you know, for somebody to imitate Michael Keaton, although, you know, the film is so well known that you also can't stray completely from that kind of wacky character that he created. And, you know, with the very first reading, it started with some lists and short lists, because the actors who are, you know, able to dive into that sort of crazy world that this character is, and sing the music that the composers have written, which is not easy to sing. It wasn't, you know, pages and pages and pages of people, and they certainly, the producers certainly, and the creative team certainly wanted to build it around, you know, somebody who they had confidence in. You know, well, everybody does, but you know, not an unknown entity when it came to that. And so, I don't know, we certainly had stars on the list, and then, you know, comedians, and then musical theater performers. The very first reading was was not Alex Brightman, it was somebody else. And then we, for the next reading or lab or whatever the next stage of the process was, we actually did a few auditions for it, because it's that scary for the creative team to just, you know, now that something existed, it was scary to just make an offer to somebody without at least having some interaction before, you know, going into a developmental process. So Alex was one of a few people who came into audition, and it was very clear that he had the right mix of you know, the quality that this weird character has, but also kind of an innocence that and a ability to make it his own. He's very creative. He's very, you know, he's good with improvisation, which I think you need in that world. So I think that's where that landed.
One of the even the word challenging, I think the word challenging, the definition is changing in some ways. I'm thinking about this season, I'm thinking about Russell Harvard, who's a deaf actor who's playing, oh my God, he's playing Cornwall in King Lear. And thinking about Ali Stroker in Oklahoma. Russell Harvard, we were having problems casting Cornwall because the men's roles in that play, aside from historically Gloucester and Lear, which are played by women in this production, Cornwall and Albany sort of, they run around and do things, but it's really the women who are pushing the energy forward. So we were having a hard time casting the men, and so I sent a list to Sam Gold and to Scott Rudin, and I had put Russell down, and Russell was in Tribes off-Broadway that David Cromer directed. He was in a Craig Lucas play that Craig wrote for him at Playwrights. And the next morning, I woke up to an email from both of them commenting on the list separately with Russell's name circled and an exclamation point. And so from that point, it was, is it a challenge to cast a deaf actor as Cornwall? I don't know that it's a challenge, it's interesting. And Sam Gold takes the offensive approach to that, not a defensive. It's, what is this gonna bring? How is this gonna affect the storytelling in a way? And the fascinating part was that we had to cast an aide to Cornwall who was an interpreter. And Michael Arden is playing the role, and he's a hearing actor. But the process by which these actors came in, and we were figuring it out in the room, and I was figuring it out even before Sam got in the room, and I'd call Sam or email Sam and say, okay, here's what we did today, and it was kind of weird, and I'm not sure if it really worked, but here's kind of what we did. And Sam's goal was, I don't know, but we're gonna make it work, because I wanna make it work, and it's worth making it work. And I think we're sort of, I would say maybe we're all on the same page, that we're trying to change the conversation from, oh, well, you can't. Oh, well, it's too hard. Oh, well, it's this too. Actually, what happens if you start, this is gonna sound like a bumper sticker, but what happens if you start with yes? You start with yes and you say, okay, let's figure out how we are gonna make this work, because it's creative and these artists have so much talent to give. And it's so exciting to me to see what's happening with Ali, because she's on her way to becoming a name, a quote-unquote name. So Ali is gonna mean something. This woman in a wheelchair, when you put her name on a list, now has value because of her, because she pushed her way. She earned her way onto Broadway now twice in a Tony nomination, and we're not gonna go backwards. I'm going on a soapbox, but I think it's, I think it's important. I think it's really important. And the word challenge somehow made me think,
Yeah, well, it's you're lifting up the next steps for everybody, And I have actually had casting directors literally just talking about their frustrations, about wanting to be able to put forth these, certain people that they thought would be interesting in roles, and that they were feeling like they were shut down. This is a couple years ago. So what I'm hoping is that the doors are opening, and that the opportunities are going to, I love that, changing that challenging idea into a yes and a what if. And especially when you have people that are on board that can allow it, can make things happen, obviously, and that are being celebrated right now. I mean, who's to say, the sky's the limit.
I feel like the things that are important to not just younger artists that are coming up, but established artists who are beginning to look at things in a different way as well. And I don't know, the nomenclature that we use is so different now too. Even 10 or 15 years ago, you'd start a process by saying to the creative team, so are we open to ... fill in your underrepresented population of performer there. No longer does a casting director, I don't think.
Even ask, no.
Now it's like,
put them on the list.
put them on the list,
Yeah.
and then tell me why no.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me, let's discuss why no. No more are we open to. We're past that point now.
Thank you so much, David. Yeah.
It's everybody up here.
Yes.
And the
well,
artists
thank
that
you
we
for
work with.
voicing it, and thank you all for doing that. For really creating new opportunities and for looking at things in different ways. And the audiences obviously are really eating it up and enjoying it, and are right along celebrating with all the other actors. So let's talk a little bit about, well, does anyone else want to talk about with their particular shows, anything that came up for them around their casting that was, I don't know if we want to call it challenging, but opening it up in new ways, new vistas?
Every project is a challenge.
Yeah.
actually.
We all probably have
I will
challenges.
embrace challenge.
But, you know.
Yeah. You never know what the challenge is going to be, and then you're in it.
Yeah.
It just is.
And you know, you all work with new work as well, and so it's creating something that might have, and there might be an idea around it, but every time it becomes something new, whether it is a film that's being made into a musical, or if it's a revival of King Lear seen in a totally new way. Talking to Benton about like Natasha, Pierre, and the Great Comet, and like that was such a different experience too, as far as for the audiences as well. That I think that opened up. I mean, you guys were under a tent for a while.
Totally, 2 tents, and yeah, then ART and then Broadway. Yep, definitely challenging having to kind of the audition process for that actually was something new for me, because we actually had to, in the audition process, test to see how actors' improv skills were working with strangers, because pretty much everyone, I think the entire cast went into the audience, and actually there were so many vignette moments all over the house where we tried to give unique experiences to the audience members. And so it was something that we had to test and see, like, there are many actors who definitely enjoy the fourth wall being there, for sure. And then there are many actors that like jump on the challenge and enjoy the actual ability to break that fourth wall. And so adding that into the audition process to actually kind of, I remember filling our audition room with my entire team, some extra interns and assistants, just to kind of create as many kind of faces for the actors that were actually coming into audition to actually work off of, that didn't feel like they were like the judging creative team behind the table. That was wild.
I will say that sometimes you don't anticipate that something is going to be, and I'm going to take the word challenging in this way and say, yes, it was challenging. A role you think is going to be simple to cast, and in Boys in the Band, one of the roles was, I don't know how many of you saw it or are familiar with it, but there's the role that's just called Cowboy. And basically he is a young kid that has moved to New York, probably from like Iowa or like a potato or corn state somewhere, guileless and attractive to these men, and he's given as a birthday present to one of the other characters. And, in the movie, he looks like a corn-fed Midwesterner, but he is not, point in fact, a cowboy. He is just hired to be a cowboy and come in a cowboy hat. And we had about like 10 sessions for this role that has probably 15 lines in the whole play. And you learn early on, oh, wow, this one is going to be a wild ride. Guys coming in and doing lap dances on the reader's lap, which is never a good idea. Touching the reader in any way, shape, or form is never a good idea, period. I would be the reader sometimes where this happens. But the thing that was interesting was that this character was objectified to a point in the play. And so any actor who called attention to himself, and couldn't actually just sit and be, didn't tell the story. And so it was this strange thing where you were trying to find someone who could make an impression, but without actually exerting storytelling onto the story, because this is probably boring to everybody, I don't know. But
You're
the story
talking to a room of actors. This is exciting.
Everything is projected upon him. So what was fascinating was that a lot of the actors that came in were the ones that just knew how to listen. They just sat there, and, a few kids that had just graduated from Juilliard came in, and I'm like, you didn't expect this to be your first audition, did you? And they're like, no. In my short shorts and my red bandana around my thing with no shirt on, I didn't. I'm like, okay, well, perhaps you're overqualified for the part, but let's try anyway. But it was difficult, even for the best actors. It was really hard. And then we got Charlie Carver, who was a doll and awesome.
Well, you bringing up things that people shouldn't do in audition rooms. And I'm just sort of wondering, like, what are some things
Don't lap dance with the reader or casting director.
All right, did everyone get that? No lap dancing with the casting director or the reader. But what are some other ways that happen where actors are sabotaging themselves in the room that you really wish they weren't doing that? So can you give us some examples of things that people do that may be like that overt or maybe even more subtle that you see and you're just like, oh, why'd they do that?
I mean, how much time have you got? I mean, to me, there really aren't any rules necessarily, but I think the most important thing is that we're most interested in you getting to the work, right? Like, you need to think about it like any job interview. So if there's a lot of like chatting and kibitzing and lack of focus, it just sort of feels like there's no possible way that you can be as effective and productive without all of that stuff. I also think that I think it's really hard and scary to truly like make a choice, right? Like a big, bold, vivid choice, something that's incredibly specific. And to me, that's always the thing that really separates the people who book from the people who don't book. And it's kind of all anybody's asking you to do, right? But I think that what happens is that you think, oh gosh, I think I'm gonna try and show that I do a lot of things kind of well, and then let her decide where she thinks I belong, type-wise and that sort of thing. And what winds up happening is then I just kind of go like, I don't quite know what to do with that person, and it's just not interesting enough. And do you know what I mean? And so it's that kind of thinking, and the thinking of you guys spending so much time trying to sort of figure out if you're the right type, if you're, I would say, you know, that the thing that bums me out the most is when I hear, you know, I'm in those hallways too. You know, I have to leave and go to the bathroom and stuff. But, you know, they're not really hiring, they're not really looking. This comes a lot with like long running situations, but, you know, your job is to audition when you're not working, right? So you want to just come in, do your job to the best of your ability, and then move on. And I think that, I think it's really hard, especially like the EPAs and that kind of thing, if you're not necessarily represented. You know, it feels like so many cattle calls, and like you're not necessarily walking into super warm rooms. And I just am really impressed when somebody like has worked really hard with their prep and comes in and does their work and does it really, really well. It's a lot more for me about what works versus what's a no-no.
I also think too, everyone's nerves manifest themselves differently. And the first 20 seconds in the room when an actor comes in is awkward for everybody, right? It's just awkward for everybody. You know, we're behind a table, so we're sort of literally and figuratively safe in some ways behind this table. But that doesn't mean that the director's not nervous because today's the first day that he or she has been behind the table with a playwright. Is he or she going to speak eloquently about the play? So I think, first off, not taking the energy in the room onto yourself or taking it upon yourself to think that you have to somehow burn sage emotionally to make the room warm. It's not gonna happen. And I think at the end of the day, when you're all standing out in the waiting room and you're thinking somehow that we know what we want, I think it's not gonna help you, because we've been a part of the them. We've been part of so many thems, teams of them. And I can't tell you how many times, how many sessions have we had where you just keep bringing in more people and more people because there is no consensus. No one seems to know what they want. And inevitably, not inevitably, but oftentimes, you go back to the first day and the first people that you brought in. But it's a whole process. So if you outside think, what do they want? What do they want? First of all, we don't know. And as Merri said, it's about the one thing you do have, the two things you have, yourself and the text. Those are the only two things you have. Right? So to me, a bold choice doesn't necessarily have to be I stand on a chair, because then at the end of the day, I'm like, yeah, that's the guy that stood on the chair. I have no idea why he did that. And then 3 years later, I'll be looking at my notes, and I'm like, oh, that's the guy that stood on the chair for no reason. I have no idea why I remember him. Didn't serve anything. But people who have read the script so acutely, almost like a dramaturg or like a director, and they've made a connection between this line and then a line 3 pages later that's so smart. I'm like, that's the kind of thinker that I want. I want someone that's really going to make a connection outside of just the mind's eye of the actor, if that makes sense. And so I think when you're out there saying, am I right? You know what? The goal at the end of the day, yes, of course you want the job, but you also want us to call you back in again and again and again. And actors that do honor themselves and honor the text, as corny as that sounds, more often than not, are the ones that I'm going to keep calling back in and hope that it hits, because they do their work.
Yeah, and to that, and I'll be really quick about this, I mean, the good news about that is that you're never going to be able to please all of the people all of the time. So instead of that letting you be frustrated, it should just kind of free you up, right? Half the time somebody comes in and I'm like, I think they killed, right? The actor leaves and I'm like looking down the table going like, right? I mean, I'm a genius, aren't I? You know, and the director's like, yeah, I don't get it. And it's like, did you not see the same thing I just saw?
Or you have a whole day of that.
And you're just like, I don't know what they want, like, But it's kind of like sometimes buying a present, like for somebody with completely different taste than you have. Like we're in a service organization, right? Like this is a service business, so it's hard to like buy something that I don't like, even if I know it's going to make somebody I love happy, because it's ugly.
And
or,
we want you to be good. And I know that sounds, whatever that sounds like, nobody wants to sit through a bad audition and nobody wants to see somebody tank. So if you're outside projecting anything adversarial onto the team, even though you may come in and everyone in that room may look like a pit bull and they don't want to smile and they don't want to whatever, because oftentimes if you as the casting director think someone's aced it, you kind of keep it to yourself. You're like, okay, I'm not going to tell anybody, because you know what? This director doesn't like me very much. And so if I say that I like this person, they're not going to
say no.
They're going to say no. So I'm going to be quiet. You know? So I don't know where I was going with that.
The point is that you get so much conflicting feedback, right? You go to coaches, you take classes, you come into the audition, your agent maybe gets you some feedback. It might be exactly the opposite of what some coach or teacher told you to do. And it's so scary, but like eventually you just got to man up and say, this works for me, this doesn't. Throw the stuff away that doesn't work, and just know that, like, since there's no possible way everybody's seeing through the same eyes, and you're not going to be able to make them do so, you just got to come in and figure out how to leave a little piece of yourself in the room. And
try not to interpret an adjustment as a criticism or as you did that wrong. Someone's trying to open the door to how to get the job. And one thing I find actors will do a lot is they will, understandably, because you've done homework and you're smart, you say, well, here's why I did that, though. I think, and then that's when we have like, oh, please don't talk, please, no. Okay, I know, I respect your choice and your thought, but this director is actually telling you what he or she wants. So in this moment, if you want the job, try to be zen. And rather than actively listen and go, or, yeah, but here's, it's a microcosm of what that director may think that's going to be like with you for 4 weeks in a room, right? And that's key. And that's part of what I think our job is too. I don't know who was saying it. I think you were saying about, like, is there a lot before the read? Like the person leaves and you're like, oh my God, that was a lot of energy, a lot of stuff thrown at me before the read happened. So when we're thinking of calling that person back, it's like, oh, will that director respond to that kind of personality? And that's not saying embalm yourself of personality. It's just understanding that there's a difference between talking to and talking at, in a way, you know? And the last thing I'll say, because I always do this, I talk too much, and then I think you should talk, Ben and Rachel. The one thing that I really can't stand, and other people might like this, is when an actor comes in and it's a long, even if it's not a long day, I don't care if it's even the first audition, and I love actors, but the minute that an actor says, so yeah, let's just play. Let's play. I'm like, oh my God. No, I don't want to play with you. I don't want to play right now. Your job is to have made a choice and show me that you can play this scene from point A to point B. That's it. If you have fun during the process and you want to play, that's cool. But tomorrow I have a director session and I need to bring people in. And I have 17 other people in the waiting room that I have to give the same level of attention that I'm giving you. And I know sometimes they don't really mean let's play, but it just, there's a feeling that it's sort of, I don't know, this isn't play, this is my work, and it's your work. Save me from myself.
What was your original question, Lori?
Yeah, I know.
Fair point.
I think the thing that I find myself most attracted to with actors in audition rooms is when they have confidence in the choices that they make. I find that even in my real life outside the audition room, the humans that I'm attracted to are the humans that feel like they are confident in the choices that they're making in their life, and also then the confident in the choices that they make in the audition room. And so it's that energy that I think often I see actors walk into a room and they go, am I what you're looking for, right? Like there's this kind of like reaching out kind of sense of almost desperation, and that's an incredibly unattractive quality to have in an audition room or to have in life, right? But it's more the energy that when actors walk into the room and they actually just say, hi, I might be what you're looking for. This is me. And they show us them. Then that is what I think that I'm attracted to and that the creative teams I work with are attracted to as well. And sure, you might not be right for that role that you're auditioning for that day, but I do think that when you can consistently come into an audition room and actually confidently show us you over and over, I think we eventually start to buy what you're selling, believe that what you're showing us is really you, and we start to actually figure out what to do with you, as opposed to these people that come into the room and kind of say like, please do something with me, right? That's just, it's entertainment is heightened reality, right? We pay God knows how much money to go sit in the dark and watch this world unfold in front of us that is, escapism, right? And we don't want to see just unconfident people on stage, kind of stumbling over themselves, right? But I do, you laugh, but I do think that is the one singular thing that I think that all professional actors on a Broadway stage have in common is that they all execute their skill set with the highest level of confidence. And that is something that then makes us not want to take our eyes off of them. It makes our shoulders drop. It makes us want to go on a 2.5-hour journey with them. And then when you go beyond that level of confidence and you start looking at their talent and their skill sets, that's when our taste comes in. And that's when I say, oh, I like the way that person sings, or oh, I don't like the way that person dances, right? And that's cool. That's going to happen forever. We're always going to be able to kind of qualify and quantify people that way. But I do think that the one thing that everyone has to have in common is that they all actually have a level of confidence that just almost feels, frankly, superhuman. Because that is the make-believe, heightened world that we are creating and that is required.
Rachel, did you have anything you wanted to add about how actors sabotage themselves in the room?
That was the question.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it is. I think these guys have covered it pretty well.
Well, maybe a slight twist to that is that what can actors control and what can't you control? Because I think a lot of times actors can get caught up in spending time and energy on things that they would like to be able to control that they have no control over.
Yeah, that's more, I think, that's a related question to me, because my answer to the, how do they sabotage themselves, was to do it. I think Merri started to say is, all you have control over is yourself and your preparation. Dave said that too. And other than that, there's nothing. You not what's in everybody's heads, not what they had for breakfast, not what happened to them yesterday, not how many people are in the lobby, not the subway, all of the other things that come into play. And so all you got is you and the material you've been given and the choices that you're making with it. And, I was thinking a number of actors, when I've sat on panels with actors over the years, the ones who are, it's so hard to define success as an actor, but those who have had some success often will have a story of the moment where they sort of where that really sunk in their lives or in their careers or in their, and much of your job as an actor is auditioning, but where once they started to realize, all I can do is be me and go in and then leave, and I got to let it go after that, is when they started to feel the work coming and feel more callbacks coming and to find, I guess, more peace and therefore more success in the audition room. When you just have that, when you can be okay with your choice, who you are, what you do, and be done with it.
That's great. Thank you. Oh, you've got. I think applause for all of these wonderful answers because, I think that being able to have these kinds of conversations where actors get to have the curtain pulled back just a little bit about the process and see what goes on, and kind of retuning the way you think about what you're doing, how you're doing it, and what you actually have control over, can really create a shift. And like you were saying, Rachel, it's like, just deciding recognizing this is what I have, this is what I can bring, and let that rest of that go in terms of the crazy, like you're talking about the nervous energy, David, and like everybody has it, it manifests in different ways. Since we do have a room full of actors, a question that comes up is, how do you find your actors for projects?
Oh my gosh. Millions of ways. I mean, there's no one way. Of course, there's the standard open calls or EPAs, ECCs, whatnot. But we go to showcases. We see shows. We all see a ton of theater. We watch TV. We go to colleges and meet people. Honestly, for anymore, I don't know how much you guys are using this, but our office uses Instagram all the time to find people.
Every day.
Every day. Yeah, you have to through like dancers and this and that. Instagram, Facebook, not really Twitter. I don't use Twitter, but the internet is a huge thing. I don't know what else.
Yeah, I would say that frankly, Instagram has been, and it's kind of a frightening thing to tell a room full of actors, but Instagram has been one of the most useful platforms for me over the past 2 or 3 years, and especially the past year. I'm working on a new television series right now that centers around young ballet dancers. And the producers gave us the directive of, we want real ballet dancers. We want real, 17, 18, 19-year-olds that actually have the body of a dancer and, are from dance companies and probably haven't acted before, right? And of course, we also want them to be as diverse and as inclusive as possible. So, Instagram has a lot of dance Instagram accounts on it. You just Google the word ballet on Instagram, and thousands of Instagram accounts come up that are centered around ballet dancers. And so then it just becomes this wormhole of me on my iPhone, like going through Instagram and just going from account to account to account and finding, a 17-year-old that just won like the state championship in Arizona, right, for competition dance, and seeing then I can find her, find her on YouTube and see if I can find her speaking anywhere to see, let's see if she actually has any sort of facility before I reach out to her, and then finding an email address on her, trying not to use Instagram to contact people because I still think that's just not quite the entry point I want with actors whenever possible. But yes. Instagram, social media in general, it's something that I've been working in the casting industry now for about 10 years. And 10 years ago, YouTube I think YouTube actually was invented in 2006, I believe, is when YouTube came onto the market. So that was 13 years ago. But I can remember when actors were afraid to put videos of themselves on YouTube, and frankly, like teachers and and acting coaches were saying the last thing you need to do is have stuff of you existing, on YouTube. That's terrible. And now it's when I go and meet with kids around the country, I mean, the first thing I say is, you need to have a YouTube channel that you're actually in control of. You need to actually be the person that's actually controlling the material that's existing of you online, as opposed to all of your friends just posting things of you, right? And you need to actually control the narrative of what you want to share with us. Because the first thing that I do when I don't know an actor, right, is I don't actually even Google you anymore. I now look you up on Instagram. But it used to be that I'd say I Google you. But now the first thing is I pull up Instagram and type in your name, and let's just see what sort of content you're selling yourself with online. And so it is something now that I think that even 5 years ago, actors were still thinking, oh, what sort of online presence do I need to have, and how useful is it? But I can tell you that it is how new talent, people that I do not know, that I haven't seen on stage before, right, or that their resume doesn't speak for themselves, it often is their actual online presence that then actually gets me to give them one of those, sacred 8 appointments an hour that I only, have to give out. Like when I actually can see what that human would be like if I were to bring them into the room, then the likelihood of me giving you an appointment is so much higher.
And this is for all ages, all shapes, sizes, colors. It shouldn't be as scary as it sounds. It's just about having some sort of even a small footprint on social media, because so much of the developmental process, whether it's a play or a television show or a musical, doesn't have any budget, or we don't necessarily have auditions for it. So if a director says to me, here's a breakdown of the types of people that I'm looking for, sometimes I go do all of the things that everybody else has said, and then sometimes I'll go to Actors Access or Breakdown, and I just literally check boxes of what I need. And 5,000 people come up in the New York area alone, and I plow through them for about 5 or 6 hours. Or because we're not having the audition process, and I kind of have ideas about people that are like what they're charging me with finding, then I go to YouTube and I look for you so that I can send a clip and educate my producers on who you are. And if I can't find anything on you, then you can't be in the running for something.
Then you can find something on somebody else.
Yeah.
Well, I think also I sometimes talk to actors, and there's some hesitation about them actually having any sort of online presence, right? They're like, oh, that's not for me, or oh gosh, I don't want an Instagram account, I don't want a YouTube channel, I'm not flashy like that, I don't want to be just so aggressively selling myself like that. And I understand that point of view for sure, but the thing to also remember is that there are some people that completely buy into this, what we're talking about. And they're killing it. They're killing it because they are actually putting material of them online that is super useful and helpful to us. And they are kind of keeping, in some sort of way, tabs. They're giving us tabs on what they're doing in their career and what positive is going on in their life. And so, I look at people digitally 1,000,000 times more than I ever see them in person, all right? People come in and audition for us, and they can spend 3 minutes, 5 minutes in the room with us, and then, outside of that, they're just a picture on a screen, or they're just a hard headshot, right? But, it used to be that you were just a hard headshot, but now you have the potential to be so much more than just a hard headshot. You can actually be, 10 videos, right? And so those people, they're always going to come into my mind so much faster than the people that don't have that sort of online kind of footprint. And so you might be incredibly talented, but I just don't remember you or don't know of you yet, as opposed to these people that have really figured out the system that is online presence.
I feel like it feels a little more like a musical kind of thing than
Maybe true.
straight
Yep,
play.
That's probably
I
true.
do think that is true, David.
Just because there's a lot, you see the bulk of your work is huge in terms of how many people you have to see and what they have to be able to do. just a comment. I mean, for me, I'm not.
No, you're totally right. I mean, I'm thinking about like, and just like Merri was saying, like when we cast, readings of shows, and there is no budget for auditions, and we need an ensemble of 10 people, right? So often I try super hard when I do readings of shows, especially if it's not, the key principal players. I try to bring new talent to the room and introduce my creative teams to new people. And they're all often so incredibly hesitant, especially the producers, right? Like, who is this person? You have to show me so much more than just a name, a picture, and a resume. And so it's the new talent in musical theater that really need the online presence.
Yeah, but I think that even with the non-musical stuff, like if there's something, we cast the whole season at Yale Rep. I didn't actually say that I work at Tara Rubin Casting before, but so put two contrasting monologues on a link and do a self-submission. It will land on my desk if it's got my name on it, and then send me to the link on your resume, and I can at least see something. Yeah,
Just
like
make sure
anything.
it's good. Just make sure it's good, and you're
Yeah.
happy with it. No, but that's
No, it's
truthful. I think some people think that just putting something up is better than nothing, and I don't think that that's true.
No, I agree.
And can we just touch for a moment on self-tapes? Anything you'd like to say about, shall we say, what really stands out as working?
Please tape horizontally.
Yes, please take horizontally.
that's that it seems
Right, the
but
phone.
still so many
iPhone,
people.
yes.
If you're doing it on the phone, still so many people do
Yeah,
it.
you still need perspective. So many people, it's just your face, and it's like, this is a theater piece. That's not helpful. So if you have access to a camera where it can actually pan out, so I get to see how you actually occupy space in a room in relationship to that room, and then they can, if you have the luxury of having someone that's running the camera, bring it in closer. Try to keep, obviously, your background as neutral as possible. If you're, camping in Maine and there's a moose head in the back because there's a moose head where you are, fine. But otherwise, there's like 20,000 versions of moose heads where you're like, I don't like your art. I don't like the background.
Same thing with clothing.
I don't want to know
jewelry.
about that stuff.
I think a big time saver to what David just said about it is so helpful to actually to get a full body shot of you at first to understand perspective in the room. Make a slate, make a 10-second slate that you use on every audition that you actually have. And on that slate, you can let somebody else film it, right, where they actually can first give a full body shot in the room and then zoom in and you can say, hi, my name is Benton Whitley and I'm represented by X, Y, and Z and, I'm 6 feet tall, right? That little 10-second video, you then actually can tag on to all the other videos you make by yourself at 2 o'clock in the morning when you don't have somebody that actually controls the camera and you're doing it from your iPhone. Because really, I do think that, all the new smartphones now, when you orientate them the right way, not, up and down, but left to right, you can buy one of those little tripods from Best Buy, like the little ones that are like 6 inches tall that like your phone fits in and you can actually just put on like, your dresser. And I know, I've helped friends do them myself too. I mean, those are enough. Those, when the sound, when it's quiet in the room and the lighting is good.
And if you can
it
get
works.
someone, get someone who is at least a decent reader.
Oh,
Right? Like, and again, I understand sometimes if you're self-taping, it's because you're away somewhere possibly, or you're not where they are, and your circumstances are not optimal. But there are so many times when you literally feel like, okay, if I send this to the team, I have to say, you have to get over the reader for the first 15 seconds, but please stick it out. But it's an impediment. The reader should not be an impediment to you. If it's your aunt who's 80 because she's the only person available, fine. Also, same thing with the automated, like, I'm going to record, I don't know, the Siri speaking to me. Same thing. It's like, it's as if your reader is a robot and you're reacting and it's talking to you like this. That doesn't help necessarily. So if you can help not doing those things, don't do them,
Well, and it sounds too that then you have to make an excuse or do something for the people that are going to be watching it, the director, the producer. And if you have to make excuses or, say, please, it's like to try to eliminate anything that's going to make your job any harder for you to get those people that could hire the actor to hire them.
Right.
To bring
And if
them
we're
in.
asking people to self-tape and they're not in a place that's conducive, that's one thing. Then we understand we asked this person and they are doing the best they can. For those who are ostensibly doing it because they're self-advocating, then you're looking at them and saying, how seriously do I take this person? They're self-advocating, and there's a moose head, and the reader is a robot, and all these things. You know you want me to take you seriously.
And it's vertical, yeah. So make sure that you're doing it horizontally. So I think we have some questions from the audience. I hope everyone was able to get those to Melissa. And I have a question as far as people being able to get in touch with you to be able to send something if they think they're right. What do you prefer?
I say, well, my big thing about submitting yourself for something is be specific. Don't just mail something to me and say, I'd like to be seen for anything you think I'm right for. You know, if you've seen something very specific and you feel like you have a reason why you know you're right for it or you feel right for it, then be specific about it. I still prefer snail mail, like
too.
a postcard
Me
or
too.
something over.
I like digital.
Yeah. Which is, I
Who's
just
the
can't.
youngest person on this panel? Benton Whitley.
It just for me, I can't keep up with email to
If
begin
you
with.
email me, it makes me feel guilty because I'm not going to answer it, and it's just 25,000 emails.
I have
and-
separate email. I don't give out my public email address. So how my office has kind of figured out how we do this is we make email accounts for every show we cast.
That's
Same.
the same.
Yeah,
We do that.
and
So
we
you
put
could-
those publicly
Right.
out there for the reason of this.
That's different. If you're wanting to get in touch with me specifically, I think snail mail is still the best. If it is to submit
Same.
for a show and there is a published email address or an email address you can find, and sometimes you can find it through the website. Sometimes you could call the office and say, "Is there an email address where you can submit to this show?" You know, then great.
Also, strangely enough, it's sort of like the beautiful person that doesn't get asked to the prom. I don't get a lot of snail mail anymore. I mean, it's a lot of times actors are submitting far less to me with actual headshots.
I
So
will go to the prom with you.
thank you very much, Merri. I appreciate that. No, I didn't mean like I was the person that wasn't asked to the prom. I mean like the male is the person. Thank you. I appreciate that though. Thank you. Now I'm blushing. I have no idea why. No, but I do think if you're make sure you spell the person, all these things. Make sure you spell the person's name correctly. Caparelliotis. Don't give anybody a reason to discount you. If you spell my name with a K, 10,000, 100 people didn't. Put on the bottom of the envelope what you're submitting for. You know, if you've met us before, met at Actors Connection, met at one-on-one. I'm not advocating those places by any means, but if you can place us on the envelope, do it. I have my also put a cover letter. I'm a sucker for a cover letter. My intern highlights the information. Hi, David, I met you at, or hi, David, I just graduated from. Hi, I just moved here. Hi, I've been retired and coming back in. I'm submitting for blah, blah, blah. If I just get a headshot in the mail, it does nothing. It's a waste of a stamp.
I also think that if you're gonna take the time to self-submit, and a lot of actors should and need to be self-submitting, we look at those, then you want to be as productive as possible. So, like, it hurts my heart that there's a huge bin in our office of stuff that's never getting opened because it's not actually addressed to anybody. It doesn't even have a show on it. And, to what Rachel is saying, if you're going to spend the money on the paper and the time and the note that you're writing and the postage and all of that stuff, I will tell you that if something makes it to my desk, it gets opened.
Totally.
It might not get opened in as timely a fashion as you would like it to, but it gets opened and it means something to me, and the follow-up also means something to me. A postcard always reminding me of, not like I'm in Turks and Caicos, wish you were here kind of postcard, like the kind of postcard with your picture on it and the contact, and you can do your very best to try and keep up with everybody and how they like their
I was gonna
stuff
say,
to be, but
You could call every office tomorrow,
You could.
each one of you, and say, can I ask what your office's policy is on self-submissions? Does that go for every casting director
Everybody's
in the
going to
office?
kill you.
It's on our
tomorrow.
websites. We put it
David
on our
Caparelliotis said.
websites. We put those policies on our website.
Okay, good. That's perfect. Or stagger the calls. But, and keep a log of that. Also, I was going to say one other thing. Oh, what Merri said. I will never forget, 10 years ago, my business partner was casting Gossip Girl. And she was coming into my office, and we put our mail on a little Lazy Susan thing back in the day. And she was walking in my office. She was like, Dave, do you remember? And literally, she saw this picture, and she kind of pulled it out, just casually asked me a question. And she was like, oh, my God, I didn't know this actor was back in town. Will you bring her in tomorrow for so-and-so? Only because that postcard arrived that day. So think about if there's a 0 in 100 chance versus a 1 in 100 chance, and it's not going to break your bank or break your spirit, you should be doing it for that one time that she looked down and said, call this woman in for hot lifeguard.
I'm sure all of us do, but I have many stories like that where a postcard hits my desk at the right time. I'm back in town, and I'm like, oh, Craig Burns, you need a Madame Horrible understudy in Wicked. I just got this from whomever. We share information with everybody that we work with. Otherwise, we wouldn't function.
And in an initial overture, you may say, I hope that you won't mind if I keep in touch with you periodically to update you on things that might be helpful to you. That immediately separates you from the pack for me, because you're discerning and you're saying, you know what, I'm going to be doing this. I hope you don't mind if I am. I'm still going to do it. But you're letting me know that you're thinking about it and that you're creating a relationship with me that you are controlling the narrative of, to use your word, the narrative thing,
I think, right, so there's the hard copy postcard, and then there's the digital version of that, which I think, so my store at Whitley has, an Instagram account, a Facebook account, a Twitter account, and we intentionally follow actors on all of those social media accounts that we want to follow, that we believe in and like. And we, all of my team has the username and passwords to those accounts, and whenever we are stumped for ideas, I actually challenge them to literally go through our Store Whitley Instagram account and just start scrolling through, I don't know, see if somebody posted a video or something they're doing recently that's going to actually spark an idea for you. And that works all the time, where they actually go through and they're like, oh my God, look, she just posted this video of her singing. It's so good. Is that what you're looking for? Great. Give her an appointment for tomorrow. And that's a weekly thing that happens in my office, that especially, of course, the younger people in my office, younger than me, the interns that work for me, who are completely glued, to Snapchat and Instagram. I mean, they come to me all the time. They are actually sending me handles of people's accounts, being like, Benton, I just saw this girl. I think she's like a sophomore at Baldwin Wallace, but she just posted this video of she and her classmate singing this song. I think she'd be really great for that reading you're casting. And sure enough, they are. And sure enough, that girl from Baldwin Wallace is going to come to New York and do a reading for us for 2 weeks because she posted a really fantastic video of her, on her social media account.
And for me, honestly, still going to EPAs is helpful. I wouldn't eschew EPAs, particularly for the TV show now, honestly. When you're tapped with, I need to find firemen with cigarette. I'm like, okay, well, no agent is going to submit their client for fireman with cigarette, so I need to find a fireman. So when I'm at APAs, I'm now who's SAG or SAG eligible, for small roles, but also for larger roles. And also, I think we've all cast people out of EPAs.
It happens more than I think actors believe it does. And
Oh,
especially
they're all
because we're
cast.
all,
They've cast everybody. Why would I go in?
especially because we all work on multiple things.
Yeah,
Right, exactly.
I would say that 35, maybe 40% of our Broadway shows, plays and musicals, and our regional plays, for sure, are cast with people we first met at an EPA. So it might not have happened for that project, but we first became aware of you at an EPA, for sure.
For sure. So Great Comet, for example, had a cast of 34. 23 of them made their Broadway debut in it. And of those 23, I think something like 16 of them had to join Actors Equity to be in the Broadway show. And I think we had all this once I was asked and we wrote all this down. I think maybe 6 of them, of those 34, came from an EPA.
And I think every major office in New York now is casting regional theater somewhere. So we're all doing more EPAs than ever before. And it's shocking because when I did the King Lear EPA, granted it was a Saturday, this is another, no one came to the prom with me, but no one came. I was literally like, are you kidding me? This is King Lear on
Incredibly
Broadway and no one is
frustrating,
coming? I wanted to like put something on Facebook like, would somebody please show up? Like, if you came, you were seen. And I've now called people back from that EPA for other things because I could actually pay attention because there were 10 of them over 7 hours. So
Wow.
go to EPA.
You know, it's so interesting because I feel like you're all giving us so many things to think about, opportunities that you can take that are in your at your fingertips, what you can control, what you can control. So I love this conversation. It feels like it's really breaking up this idea of definitely the us and them. I mean, that you know, you've all said you want actors to do well, you want them to walk in, you want them to be the solution to your problem. But I feel like you've given us a lot of ideas and a lot of hope around different things that are available. I wanted to just get to a couple of quick questions before we get to the end. And this is from Evelyn. How often is good to post on Instagram, to post creative content on Instagram?
Yeah, so I
You want to
think
take that, Benton? Yeah.
sure. I mean, definitely there is doing it too much. There definitely is a breaking point for it, for sure. And there are some people that do it too much. But I would say I think posting on Instagram, twice a week. Once a week, I would say probably twice a week would probably be like the sweet spot. I think that when you post on Instagram twice a week, then you still are appearing in our actual algorithm as it actually goes through on most people, because typically, at least in my Instagram, I mean, I'm seeing posts that someone posted 2 days ago, 3 days ago, 4 days ago. So if you want to kind of constantly kind of always have something fresh, then I would say doing it like twice a week is the sweet spot on that. But doing it more than that, then I think it actually is kind of like, good grief, this person has a lot of time on their hands.
Is there like a methodology to what you see in terms of like if someone's in control of the narrative of this Instagram person that they're creating or showing you, that they're building on what they are showing you in a way that's sort of like, here's what you've not seen me do yet?
Yeah, sometimes not. Yeah. Yes, for sure. I think that the big thing that I'm looking for on social media, beyond seeing that you're talented, that you have, the skill set I'm looking for, is I'm looking for people that actually seem like positive people. And I do think that that often really reads on social media, right? Even with people that are posting videos of them singing or acting, like it sometimes can turn into like some sort of like negative rant. I think though the big thing that I think it makes you have the most successful presence online is actually having a positive and productive presence online where you actually look like a happy person.
People get political? Like
People get political.
Does that factor into anything?
Yeah, people get jaded that they aren't having the careers that they want to have. But I think the important thing is that we also, as being casting directors, of course, we are here to quantify your talent, but we're also here to make sure that you're not crazy. And that is a big part of our job, is that we have to actually be able to speak on behalf of you as humans, that you actually are going to be professional and positive people in the room. And so social media often is incredibly helpful for that as well. You can look at someone's social media account and see, oh my God, this person is really good.
Think about that young woman who was fired in London from The Color Purple.
Oh, I don't even know about that.
Yes,
She was
I
like,
remember. Yeah,
for
because
something
of
she
comments
posted
that
when she was like 14 or 15, she posted like an
Yeah.
anti-LGBTQ,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then she was playing Celie, and she was fired. So I feel like
Yeah.
classes should probably be taught about
Yeah.
if you
Social
wanted to
media.
be
Yeah,
an
I could go
actor,
on
you
about
just
it for
say
You
hours.
just don't want to post anything that you do not want everybody to see and know about, because unfortunately, I know for a fact that like we're going to talk about actors in the room, and then everybody's going to go home and either Google you or go find you on Instagram or on Facebook. And if they're going to make a judgment call, but they don't know you, but they're going to make a judgment call anyway, and that's on you, right? So you got to be really careful about your content.
It's the narrative you control.
You guys, thank you, because that's also something. It sounds like, as we're moving forward with technology, Again, there are things that are going to be successful for you, and that are things that are going to maybe not work out necessarily, in your favor. I would love to just find out what you're working on now, if you'd like to share it with us before we have to wrap up the evening. Rachel?
I am finishing up casting the tour of Frozen. Some new projects I'm working on. A musical about Princess Diana, which is in development. And this fall in Atlanta, a musical called Becoming Nancy, based on the book of the same name. It's one of Jerry Mitchell's new projects. And I'm super excited about I've done some readings, and it's finally going to happen the upcoming season at the Atlantic Theater, The Bedwetter, which is Sarah Silverman's
That's so cool.
book. Yeah, it's a really fun one. But those are a few. I mean, we could go on forever on the stuff that comes across our tables, or that we're with from reading phase to where we are. But those are some of the things that I'm working on right now.
It's exciting. David?
New Amsterdam, the NBC shows are going to start in a couple of weeks. We're doing... what are we doing? We're doing a couple of Broadway things that aren't announced yet. At the Signature, we're doing a Horton Foote play. And actually, Anna Devere Smith is going to be one of the writers in residence this year, and we're doing revivals of Fires in the Mirror and Twilight Los Angeles. And actually, Twilight Los Angeles, there's going to be 4 actors that are performing it instead of just Anna, which is going to be totally, totally cool. And working with her is bucket list for me.
I am working on lots of replacements at the moment. The Phantom Tour, the Bronx Tale Tour, Jersey Boys off Broadway. I'm getting ready to gear up for auditions for a new, very funny comedy that will be sort of the holiday thing that will happen at the Old Globe in San Diego. And I am also
I'm casting the Grinch. What are you casting?
It's not the Grinch, my friend.
You have the fun one. I'm casting Old Max.
Well,
for the
that's
Grinch.
okay. I'm casting
At
old
the Old
Scrooge.
Globe.
It's the same thing. And then I'm gonna do a new musical at the La Jolla Playhouse, and a couple of regional things, I think, that we're still sort of talking about.
2 hours ago, I was in auditions for Dave Malloy's new musical that he's doing with Rachel Chapkin, the same director of Hadestown and Great Comet, based on Moby Dick. It's going to be at ART this December. And what else? I'm in auditions this week for that ballet show I mentioned earlier. It's a new Netflix series. It's a young adult series that basically is Gossip Girl meets Black Swan. It's like an elite, it's about the internal drama that goes on at an elite ballet academy. 10 episodes, yeah. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. And that's where I'm finding all these crazy dancers all over Instagram. And then also, I'm developing a new musical right now that is called Stew for Silverton. It's based on the first openly transgender politician in America, which is a woman named Stu Rasmussen that was elected as the mayor of Silverton, Oregon in 2008, on the same day that Barack Obama was elected president. It's really beautiful. It's filled with many transgender and non-binary actors in the story, and that has been a really big treat for me to meet so many new, incredibly talented people.
It's amazing.
We're living in an exciting time with casting, without a doubt. And I really want to thank you all for being here tonight, and let's all wish them well for the Tonys coming up on Sunday. Thank you so much. Thank you.